Welcome to the podcast Verses and Visions Creative Conversations. I'm your host, Cassidy Beck, and I am delighted to be talking to Kelli Price. Kelli, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so delighted and excited to be talking to you.
Just to tell you a little bit more about Kelli, Kelli Price grew up climbing the Red Rocks of Southern Utah. She has a degree in school psychology from Brigham Young University. She enjoys helping kids discover solutions to their problems. When she's not working as a school psychologist, she's busy creating problems for the kids in her books to solve. Fortunately, she believes in true love, happy endings, and redemption for all people, real or imagined. Spliced Up is her first novel. Kelli, there's so many things I want to talk to you about. Let's talk about Red Rock and Southern Utah. I swear the sky is literally more blue in Southern Utah. Has that been your experience?
Yes, I think you're right. I feel like it is more blue down there, and it probably helps that it never rains. Nothing clears out that blueness. That desert blue sky is beautiful.
I think also with the contrast to the red makes the vibrancy of the blue stand out more, but it is just stunning. I have had occasion to go down there several times, and every time I feel renewed at how beautiful it is.
Yeah, I agree. And it's great. To me, it's just coming home. So that's adds to the wonder of it all, that feeling of coming back to the place that I love, that I grew up in, that everyone else has grown to love, at least in the state of Utah. I've always known how special it is, but now everyone else has been on the secret.
To give you a little bit of background knowledge, how I have met her, I wrote a manuscript and then I was like, now what? And I was just stuck. And I think I was complaining to my sister-in-law, Deborah Stillman, and she said, I know exactly who I need to put you in contact with. And she introduced us, and I am so grateful that she did. Different kind of communities or organizations that I've been a part of, I feel like there's kind of gatekeepers that like know stuff that you don't know, but they're not going to tell you the stuff that you don't know because they're just going to be like, I had to pay the price to find this stuff out on my own, so good luck. And I say that because that was not at all how you were. Like anything that you knew, you were happy to share. There was a conference that you told me to go to. You told me about your own story, your own kind of like where you were with your manuscripts, the things that you were working on. And as I've come to know a little bit more about this community and grow in this community, I feel like it is one that is open and sharing. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like writers are helping other writers all the time, and it probably wasn't a unique experience you had with me sharing my knowledge. Breaking into that world of publishing and writing has always been a little mysterious, and we're breaking apart some of the mystery and sharing some of that knowledge and expertise online. We have a lot of online communities that are open for anyone to join that's interested in writing, and conferences are great places to meet up and share expertise. The community of writers is not gatekeeping anything. The real gatekeeping is, can you get an agent? Can you get an editor? Can you publish? But yeah, as far as sharing knowledge, that's all, yeah, readily available. And it is complicated and it can be tricky. So you almost need mentors and people to help you through the process.
So the conference you told me about was Story Makers, and that was wonderful. It's usually around Mother's Day in Provo. I think
Yeah,
the convention center is where they had it. Is that where it was last year?
yeah, that's where it is. Yeah,
Okay.
they do every year around Mother's Day.
Another one that I went to was LDS PMA, which is Latter-day Saints in Publishing, Media, and the Arts. That is also fantastic, typically around fall break at UVU. I had to choose which one to go to. This time I chose LDS PMA. Both of them are great conferences. And I feel like at those conferences, it is just full of lovely people like yourself that have experience, that have expertise, that are open and willing to share. And the classes are full of that. And it's so wonderful. I think it's just a wealth of knowledge and information, but also of connections. One of the highlights of going to these is meeting people that are interested. I call it nerding out. I love writing and I love talking to people that love the same things that I do. And I feel like it felt my people, even though a lot of them I'm meeting for the first time.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I go to those conferences and just fangirl over everybody. I see my favorite authors that I've never met, but I've read their stuff and get to meet them in person and have them sign my books. It just feels like nerding out and fangirling over everybody. I love it. I think it's important because as writers, we're so often in our own bedrooms or offices on our computers alone. And you forget that there's another world that exists out there. It's really nice to go to a conference, meet up with other people that are also writing on their own and share experiences. I think those conferences are really useful. I think it was brave of you to go to one at the stage you were at when I talked to you. It makes me think of my first conference. I was at an even earlier stage. I hadn't even written my book yet. I'd written one chapter. I had a friend who was presenting at this writing conference, and I thought I've always wanted to do this. This is my first step toward achieving my dreams. I went to this conference and I remember feeling so awkward. I went by myself and sat at a table with some other writers. The question that everybody asks you is, what do you write? I didn't even know the answer to that question at that point. I had this half-baked idea in my head for my story that I'd written one chapter. That was the step that propelled me into finishing my book. And at that conference, I was able to meet like another local author who got me set up with a critique group that I still meet with. I've been meeting with for years. So it really was an important step, and those conferences are important in the journey.
I like to talk about imposter syndrome, and I feel like this is one that I sat in my car, like I drove there and I was like, I'm ready. And then I just sat in my car and I was like, what am I doing here? I don't know anyone. And then I made it in, and then I was in this conference that is full, like there are so many people. And I had those feelings like I do not belong here because these are people that know what they're doing. I felt like such a wannabe. I know you were at the conference, but we hadn't met face to face. It just took talking to other people. And it was a really cool conference. You get to meet people that really know what they're doing, teaching the classes, and very established, like best-selling authors. It was really fun for me. I had read The Slow March of Light, and I don't know why, but I had assumed it was written by a man. I went to an author signing event, and Heather B. Moore, who wrote The Slow March of Light, had it at her table. And I'm like, wait a minute, you wrote that book? It was so fun to put a name to a face of someone that has written. It has been such a wonderful experience. Tell me your experience with imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah, I've definitely felt and continue to feel imposter syndrome. And I think a lot of people do. I definitely felt at that first conference that I went to. I'm sitting there talking to people who are saying, I write YA and I've written 4 books and I published 2. And I'm sitting here going, I've written 1 chapter. And now looking back, I think I'm that person at the conference who has written 3 books and published one. Do you know what I mean? And I just think with imposter syndrome, you just have to take it one step at a time. You have to ask yourself, if I don't feel like a writer yet, what would make me feel like a writer then? Back when I first started, if I went to a writing conference, I'd feel like a writer. So I did that. If I finished my novel, I would feel like a writer. So we did that. At this point, if I get 20 reviews on Amazon, I'll feel like a real writer. And I just keep taking the next baby step toward that goal. Just barely, I took a flight to Ireland and back, and I wrote all 13 hours of that flight because that's what a writer would do. And because I love it, that's what I would choose to do. What would a writer do? Would they have a social media page? Okay, then that's what I'll do is have a social media page. And it's almost like just we're going to fake it till we make it. We're going to pretend that we're a writer until we really are. I still struggle with it. I have my one book that I've published with a small press. The other day, I had a colleague at work who wanted to introduce me as a writer to this new group of colleagues. We were in a meeting and I was nervous about that. I thought, well, I'm not really a writer. I just publish with a small press. I have one book, but I think it's good to remind ourselves that we don't need to be perfect to get rid of that perfectionism. Realize the facts are that, yeah, I've written 3 books. I'm a writer.
One of the things that I was asking about Southern Utah is when you said when you go back there, you get this sense of returning home. We have both relocated. For me, it's been fairly recently. For you, it's just been a couple of months. And trying to establish a new home for yourself and for your family is a tricky dynamic. What does that look like for you, trying to establish a new sense of home?
It's not so hard for me. I've moved a few times in my life and I actually enjoy. I like novelty. I like being in a new place. I like meeting new people. I have liked having a new job, but for my family, that's more my concern. It's been hard on my kids who are teenagers. For my kids, it's hard to watch them struggle being in high school. Your friends are really important and you really haven't developed your sense of self and identity yet. I miss my friends and my old life, but I'm also excited for new opportunities here.
When we moved, even before we had found a house, the first time my husband drove into the valley, like Treasure Valley, he's his home, and it was like just like that. It went so fast for him. It took considerably longer for me. I was so concerned about my kids, and we moved during it was like 2023. We had a long process of moving, and I was so concerned for them. Come August, they got into school. My husband automatically had his work community that he was with all day long. They were in their communities, and I was like, oh, what about me? And it was really interesting too, because this was the first year that I just had all this time to myself. My kids were all gone, and it felt like, who am I? Really, like during that time that they were gone, it was really hard to try and figure, just to have all of it combined at the same time has been a challenge.
It's hard to find a new community and a new group, especially as your kids get older. I think our ward families are really helpful for that. We've had a good experience with that here. That's not to say that I don't miss my friends. I had such a good group of friends where I used to live. I just have a couple friends here, and they're like surface level friendships so far, and that's hard. The place I lived last was a 10-year stint. So we had deep friendships that had been forged over years and trials and challenges. And my good friend that I walked with every single day is no longer, gosh, I'm like getting a little emotional thinking about that one, isn't with me here. It is hard to uproot and replant.
Those relationships that are so important take time, and it's not something that can develop. I feel like just like roots of the tree or roots of a plant, like it takes time. You can't make roots grow faster than they're gonna grow. You just have to give it time, and it's hard. One of the things I thought was interesting, I was talking to a Christian woman. Randomly, I met her in a parking lot and we talked for a really, really long time. She and her husband were on a date with another couple, and my husband and I were just coming out of the same restaurant. They had moved into the valley as well, and they had come with their family. I was like, tell me how your church is organized, because ours is wherever you are located, then that's like your ward is just based on your geographical position. This is where your house is, this is where your ward's going to be. And so you just go to it and it's pre-established. Her church wasn't like that. They had to go find what felt right. One of the churches felt really good for the husband and their son, but their daughter and their mom weren't feeling it. They had to keep going and feel like to go to feel what felt right to all of them. And I feel like that would be such a difficult thing to try and find a community that fit all of your needs. Our structure is different in that this is where we're going to go. And then how can you help and serve? I feel like that is how we dig those roots.
I appreciate the structure that the LDS church uses for that, the ward boundaries and everything. And I think we're always in the right place at the right time. That's just my belief. I've been having a hard time finding someone to connect with at church. And then my husband invited a family over for dinner, and the wife is a writer. And
Mm.
she writes exactly what I'm writing right now, which is adult romance. We connected, and I just feel like, okay, I think that I've been placed in the right place at the right time, which I think is always the case, no matter where you're at.
You went to BYU, you studied psychology. I was just thinking how nice that would be as a background, because no matter what the genre is, like your characters, You need to have a understanding of what would motivate them or how they might act or react to a situation. What an amazing foundation having that is for you to have strong characters.
Character development comes really easily for me. Not everything does with writing, but that one definitely does. I really like people. I'm really curious about people. And I think that's the crossover between school psych and writing and your Venn diagram. It's people, right? And I'm not a judger. I just really am curious about people and why they do what they do and emotions and all of that. So when I'm writing my characters, they're real to me, just as real as the kids I meet with at school. And yeah, I feel like that does make it. And I don't even know if it's necessarily my degree or my training that makes it easier. It's just like this interest I've always had in people, and I'm always trying to figure them out. When I'm working as a school psych, I'm trying to help them and help them figure out their problems. But as an author, it's really the opposite. I'm like, okay, how can we mess things up for you and make this interesting? And then you're on your own to solve it. So that's been a fun experience doing it in reverse and making problems.
Every book is going to have an obstacle or a challenge, and how helpful that background you have in what would be particularly stinging to this character, and to have them like, how would they overcome this? That is
Yeah.
awesome.
And what you said is really important because something that I have learned, I've read multiple books on the craft of writing, and we've talked about, I've gone to conferences, and it actually is really important when we design our characters to make sure that there is some kind of internal trauma or struggle that's motivating their behavior. Some writers get too wrapped up in the action or even the romance or any of the plot stuff, but what makes it more impactful as a reader is if there's some kind of internal struggle going on. And that's where I guess that is helpful being a psychologist. It's, yeah, I am aware of the different kinds of trauma that and the effect they have on us. And my characters, yeah, they're always going to have some little or big trauma, making them do what they do in my books.
I think like having that experience of knowing, okay, if this was the trauma that we're talking about, this is a typical response that I've seen. And not that you would write one of your clients or patients into your book, but you could see patterns. If this is a situation, this is something typical that I've seen. As a reader, you want something that feels true to life. And that doesn't seem fair that you have as a writer all of this at your disposal. It feels awesome for you to be able to draw on that wealth of information.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome. My writing group calls me the emotion police because, and I think there are other readers like this too. If I'm reading something and the character's not showing any emotion about it, I pick up on it. Like you said, this is BS. This is not real. This is not true because there's this horrible thing happening to them and they're not sad or angry or upset. Those are always glaring to me. It's interesting that some people that doesn't come maybe as naturally too.
Yeah. Spliced Up is for 10 to 13-year-olds.
Probably from 12 to 18,
Okay.
maybe even 13, 14 to 18, depending on what you let your kids read. It's probably like a PG-13 kind of situation. There's a little bit of violence. There's like a love story involved. There's some like heavier philosophical themes, and that might just not be interesting for a younger reader.
Mm.
I think age 13 to 18 is the sweet spot.
Yeah. And then you're writing adult romance as well.
Yes, I'm writing like a rom-com and it's been so fun. It's a total genre switch. I tend to read widely. I can appreciate a lot of different types of books. As I've gotten older and I have so much going on in my life between my family and my work, which can be stressful, I feel reading has become an escape for me. I've been reading a lot of fluff, romance, rom-com, comedy novels, and I've been loving it. It's so nice to have that escape from reality. After a long day, it's fun to escape into one of those novels. And I'd been reading so much of it, I thought, I'm going to try this out. And I've really enjoyed tapping into that side of my creativity. It is a special talent to be able to write a whole dialogue. And I've had so much fun with it. I'm not sure if this is true for everyone. There's probably some people who can just put out a book and it's perfect from the start. But when I first started writing my critique group, this current novel that I'm writing, they didn't like the main character at all. She just wasn't working. And I just kept writing her for probably 12 chapters. And I just had to keep figuring her out based on their feedback. And finally, in about 12 chapters in, we had her figured out. I'm on chapter 30 now. And my writing group has come to love her, and she is the star of the show for sure. There's a lot of good stuff going on with witty banter and fun plot lines and love and romance, clean romance, of course. It's been fun to see this book evolve, and I'm really enjoying it.
So the book I'm reading right now is The Warmth of Other Suns. Is that one you're familiar with or have read before? You were talking about having to get away and just like free from drama and just a nice escape. This is definitely not that. The author is Isabel Wilkerson. It's a winner of a Pulitzer Prize. It is an incredible story. It's the epic story of America's Great Migration. I'm learning a lot. I highly recommend it. It is not a feel good. It's like worth the discomfort of reading. It is talking about the Great Migration. It is during the Jim Crow era and in southern states that there was a huge migration of African Americans fleeing for liberty. And it is really interesting because during this migration, it was just a lot of people independently making a decision. It wasn't an organized effort. It was just a lot of families being like this is awful. We have to put ourselves in a better situation. And so collectively, there was this huge migration, and it is heart-wrenching and horrible, and also a very good book. I like to balance it because I love reading the fluff. I love reading as an escape. This is one that my book club chose. I like book club because I like to read a variety of different things. This isn't one that I would have picked out for myself. That being said, I'm very glad that I did. The last book we read was great and fluffy and fun. Do you have a book club?
I'm not in a book club currently. I appreciate the harder books and the harder topics. I appreciate the classics. I feel like to be a good writer, you really have to read a lot. You can't just read fluff. The kind of rom-coms that I'm reading and writing do tackle some harder themes too. I like Emily Henry. I don't know if you've read anything. If you haven't heard of her, she's the queen of romance right now. And her books are light and fun, but they also are literary and tackle some harder themes. I really like Lynn Painter. If you can handle a little bit of language, she's a YA author that does romance, and anything by her is an automatic. I put it in my cart on Amazon because her banter and her dialogue is just amazing. And that's what I'm here for right now. A clean romance author that I like right now is Sarah Adams. Her stuff is great. And that's what I'm trying to write, more along those lines. But like, I am down if somebody recommends like a heavier book, I will always read it if it's someone that I know has good taste in literature. Yeah, I'm down for that too. And I think there's a place for all of that. Sometimes it's good to be aware of issues and to feel emotion and be reminded of hard things in history. And I think there's a place for that too, for sure.
Each genre has its own set of rules, and you understand and appreciate those rules as a writer differently than you do as a reader. How have you experienced those rules as a writer that writes in different genres?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Each genre has its own set of rules and they change rapidly. So you have to be aware of all the different rules. I wrote in YA, that's my first novel, and science fiction. And I will say, like, when my first draft of Spliced Up that I sent through my critique group, a lot of the feedback was that I needed more technology, more world building.
Mm.
And that was missing. They were correct. It was missing. I had to go back and add a lot of world building, which ended up being really fun. And some of the reviews that I've gotten and feedback since the book was published is that people are loving the world building and the technology. In that particular genre, world building is really important. Whereas writing romance now, world building's not so important. It's my book's actually set in Idaho.
Mm.
And so there's a bit of world building around that. It's a fictional town in Idaho. And that's been fun. It's happening in the winter. So we're building a cozy winter scene. But really what's important is the dialogue and the chemistry between the characters.
It's funny that your book is set in Idaho because we do a lot of traveling as a family. We drive a lot and we do a lot of audiobooks. One of the ones that we've done that we have loved is Michael Vey. And Michael Vey is set in Meridian, Idaho. It moves around the world, but originally the characters are from a couple of the characters are from Meridian, Idaho. It was really funny. This is where we live now that we could make that connection to a book. They also have a Pizza Planet that we have looked for, and unfortunately, that was a fictitious.
The setting of a book is so just like almost a character in itself sometimes.
Yes.
I like being outdoors and I like being aware of my environment. I feel like sometimes I could write a whole book just based on a place that I've been. It inspires me. I just got back from Ireland and being there, I had all sorts of ideas of things I can write that are based in Ireland.
Go figure. I tried to write in science fiction for a little while, and that technological part of it was so hard for me because you want to do future. And I feel like I wrote a future, but it's not really that futuristic because it's already happening, not to me, but somebody already has that technology that I thought was so far in the future. Is that hard for you?
I would say that's hard for me. Things like character development are come naturally to me. The world building is harder. Descriptions of settings is harder to me. It's not to say that I can't do it, but it is more work. And I feel like world building in my sci-fi novel, I did do quite a bit of research. I had to really get in touch with that part of my imagination that we all have that ability to create worlds. It's just a matter of tapping into that and figuring that out. And it took me a minute to figure out all of that. But once I did, I was just immersed in that world. Once you get a few details, you're like, okay, I see where we're at now.
That's really cool. I feel we do have that capability, that blank screen that we all have, or that blank canvas to paint whatever we want on it. And I think that's cool that it took time for you, but you were able to do it.
Yeah, it took a lot of time. I will say that I researched the technologies already there. My jumping off point was what technology is out there or at the forefront? What are we going to see in the near future? And then let my imagination take over from there. What if that was just one step further? The whole idea for my Spliced Up novel came from a podcast I was listening to about CRISPR technology, which is like gene editing. That's where the whole premise of the book comes from. And I did a lot of research on what are we doing with CRISPR right now, which was a lot of stuff with disease. And that's what my book is about. What if we took that one step further and people were using it to fix their acne or make sure they had a certain color of hair if you were editing your genes? And it just spun out from there. So again, it's just like letting your imagination do its thing. It's fun.
What podcasts would you recommend?
Oh, I used to listen to writing podcasts and I don't anymore. I listen to random podcasts that don't have anything to do with my job or my writing. Wait, don't tell me on NPR.
Mhm.
I love comedy and anyway, that's fun. And then I love Freakonomics,
Mm.
which again, it just gets you thinking broader about different topics. I get lots of ideas from that one. I listen to Planet Money. So my husband's an economist. Anyway, yeah, I have a varied interest as far as podcasts go. And I do think it's good sometimes to listen to a whole bunch of different kind of stuff so that you're getting ideas from different places. And we're not all just writing the same plot where a writer is at the office in love with her editor and it all kind of becomes the same thing
Yeah.
over and over.
Yeah, exactly. So I haven't listened to the Freakonomics podcast. I have read the book and I love it. I had the hardest time with economics in school, but I love the idea of applying economic principles to topics that I find more interesting. I feel like that's one I'm going to definitely have to check out. I have gotten into true crime because you read it or just listen to it and you're like, how is this real? The real life stuff that reads or sounds like fiction is very entertaining.
I haven't gotten into true crime, but I have a lot of friends that are, and I get it. I think I get it.
Kelly, where can we find your stuff?
You can find my book Spliced Up on Amazon. Um, you can get it on Kindle back or paperback copy on there. You can, I think there's a link on my website. It's kellypriceauthor.com. You can find me on social media. I'm on Instagram at author Kelli Price or Facebook. Connect, find me. I'm out there. I'm not great at the marketing. I'm learning and I enjoy creating and the book writing more, but I realize the importance of I want people to read what I write. So I realize the importance of it.
It's hard. It's hard to do it all and find a balance of finding time to write and spreading the word. When is your next book coming out?
I don't have anything coming out yet. I have this one that I'm finishing. It'll be finished probably in a couple of months. And then for those that aren't familiar for the process that this takes, at that point, I'll be pitching the book to editors and agents. And hopefully someone will pick it up. If not, my plan is to self-publish my romance novel. I have another novel that I wrote a few years ago that I'm going to be revamping once I'm finished with this one. And that one is another young adult novel dealing with some themes of bullying, and it's just it's got some romance themes as well. So it would be a good read for, again, that 13 to 18-year-old age group, but it's set in contemporary times. So I've got that one that I'm going to be working on doing some edits and then pitching again. Hopefully we'll have another book for me out within a year or so.
I appreciate you so much coming. Tune in next week for another episode of Verses and Visions. I'm your host, Cassidy Beck, signing off for today.
Thanks.